We move on to Daf Lamed Beis Amud Beis. However, if you find this round piercing area Keneged Alev, but ain't a love kurt of dam, you don't find any blood in it, then mutter. Then we don't suspect that this opening was done during the lifetime of the animal, otherwise there would have been some blood there. But rather, the skin, after the animal was already slaughtered, was flayed, and there was no performance of any idol worship. Amar Rav Huna, Lo Shanu. When do we have this kula? That since there was no dam, that's proof positive that it wasn't part of their cult. That's only shalom molcho. He didn't salt the hide. But if he salted it, then ema milcha avaraso. It could be that the reason why there's no blood there is because the salt removed the blood, but there really was blood there. So we're back to suspecting. So now we've limited that last leniency, that precondition, that there has to be a kurt of dam, and that condition of kurt of dam will only apply when there was no salting process. But if there was a salting process, then even in the absence of a kurt of dam, because you find this round pierced hole, keneged, right, parallel or corresponding to the lave, then we suspect it was takrov v'sak. Now, Rav Shimon Gamliel bisman shakera shalo agul also b'moshuch muter. This opening, keneged alev, in the hide of the animal that you found, which leads you to suspect that it was used as part of this cultic paganistic service to the idols, that's only, says Rav Gamliel, Rav Shimon Gamliel, if you found it round. But if you found it elongated, then it's mutter. Rav Yosef, Rav Yehuda, Shmuel, Rav Shimon Gamliel. We can be makil and rely on Rav Shimon Gamliel. Now wait a second. What are you telling me, Rav Yosef? You're telling me that we paskin like Rav Shimon Gamliel? That if it's moshuch, it's mutter? Does anybody argue against Rav Shimon Gamliel? In other words, what necessitates a halacha like so-and-so if there are dissenting opinions that reject it? So the Gemara says, are you telling me that there's someone who would argue about this thing? From the get-go, we knew that the only time we suspect this idol worship is only if it's round. The hole that's pierced is round, but if it's in long, who would argue with that? Amalei, so Rav Yosef says to Abaye, my nafkalon, well, why are you making such a big deal about it? You're telling me Michlal de Pligi. Forget about Michlal de Pligi. Okay, nobody argues with him. But the halach is like Rav Shimon Gamliel. Now we can be making in the case of an elongated piercing. Amalei, so Abaye was not happy with that response. And he says, Gemara, Zomratata. Hey, this is an idiomatic phrase that appears throughout the Talmud. Do you want to make the study of Gemara like a song? You know, you sing a melody, you know, and it has no purpose whatsoever. You're telling me a tradition that we pass like so-and-so when nobody argues with him. So why do you have to tell me we pass like so-and-so if it was a given, universally accepted halacha? And the Gemara blibes, the Gemara doesn't answer that question. Okay, now we get to the Mishnah. The Mishnah makes the following distinction. If the akum is holding on to meat, which he, the guy, the idol worshiper, slaughtered, obviously he can't eat that meat. That's upgrade. That goes without saying. We don't rely on the shechita of a guy. But is it asur ba'ana? Meaning, do we assume that it was slaughtered for the purpose of avodas kochavim, and therefore comes under the halach of tikrovas over kochavim, and it's asur ba'ana? So you can't buy this meat, can't sell it, you can't use it for any purpose and any benefit whatsoever. So the Mishnah makes the following distinction. If you intercept the guy is on his way to the temple with this meat, and you intercept, and now you get the meat while he's on his way, then it's mutter. But if, on the other hand, this idol worship is on his way out, he exited from his temple, and he's holding on to this basar, then it's asur ba'ano. Then we assume he already had designated it and used it as part of the idol worship. So the Gemara asks, Man Tana? Which Tana is it that would allow you to use an animal that's slaughtered by an Ovid Kochavim? Even if you intercept him on his way to the temple, once he shechts it, that's already the beginning of idol worship. Idol worship begins with the slaughtering of the animal. And therefore the basar should be also ba'ano, even on its way in. So that Rabbi Lazar is of the opinion, and apparently our mission is against Rabbi Lazar, that we assume that when the idol worshiper shechted the animal, he slaughtered it for the purpose of Avoda. He's doing his service and worship to the Avodah Zara. And therefore would be asur ba'ano even on the way in. Our Mishnah rejects Rabbi Lazar and expresses the opinion of the other colleagues, the other scholars of Rabbi Lazar's Seah, and they are of the opinion that the guy shechts the animal, and then later on he decides whether he wants to use the meat to fulfill his avoda in the service of avodas kochav. So therefore, if he hasn't yet arrived at the temple, then we assume it's not shechted for the purpose of avodah zarah. So again, if we were to ask the question, when an idol worshiper slaughters an animal, do we assume A or B? A, he must have slaughtered it for the purpose of idolatry. Or B, no. He slaughtered it for the purpose of slaughtering it, and then he'll decide later on down the line, maybe he'll bring it to the meat to the temple and use it for idol worship. And an afkamina is going to be, if you catch it on its way into the temple, is it asur ba'ano? Hayotze asur neshu kizivchei mason. What's this phrase, kizivchei mason? We see it over and over again. That the meat of the idol worship is like the carbon of a dead person. My time. Why is it called that? The name has to mean something. So first, before we get to that issue of etymology, in other words, the meaning of the phrase zivchei mesim, first, we want to know, why is it that when the guy walks out of the temple, his temple, for idolatry, and he's holding on to meat, we assume that that meat is asur ba'ano. Efsha deleket krovos over the kochav. Meaning, I think the Gemara is asking it like almost as a rhetorical question. Is it possible that he went into the temple and he didn't sacrifice or offer this as an offering to his God? Efsha, that's impossible. And Mani Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseru. This Tana of our Mishnah is none other than Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseru Desanya. We learned in the Brayso. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseru Omer minayin letikrovus akum shemitame bi'oel. Again, we'll get back to that in a minute. I'm just going to skip a little bit and then we'll come back. And we have now an explanation as to why this meat is asur ba'ano. And not only is it asur ba'ano, which is called zivchei mesim, we're going to see that you can't have ano from a mess, from a corpse, and therefore you can't have ano from avodah zarah to krovos avodah zarah, which has the same status as a mess. But not only that, it has the same status as a mess with regard to tumas oil. So if a mess and another person who's tar find themselves underneath a roof, then the person who's tar contracts tumas mess. And so too, by virtue of an analogy, which we'll see in a minute, if a person finds himself under the same roof with tikroves avodah zara, he's tumah. And this is a tumah of an avatumah, metame adam v'kelim, not just ochlin umashke, but even other v'kelim. Shenemar, and we learned it from the parsha that we read just a few days ago. Vayitzamdu lebal pior vayochlu zivchei mesim. Right, when they sent out the women of Midian to entice the Jewish men, and the Jewish men worshipped Pa'ar in order to get what they wanted to get, physical gratification. So the Torah says they ate from the meat of that sacrifice that they gave to Pa'ar, and that meat is called Zivchei Mesim. So we see that Avodah Zarah, Tikrovos Avodah Zarah, is being compared to a mess. Ma mes metami ba'ohel. Af tikrovas avodas kochav metame ba'or. So it's metame ba'oel. And not only that, just like a mess is also ma'noah, so too the tikrovas akum is also ma'noah. So we can't benefit at all from that which was, right? So when you see the guy coming out of the temple and you see it was brought as a sacrifice to his idol, can't have any benefit from it. Now, the word tarfus is a pejorative term for avodah zara. Tarfus means, something disgusting, repulsive. Don't go into any business transactions, as we saw at the beginning of the Masechta, with an idolater who's on his way to tarfus, to fulfill his service to avodah zara. Why? Because if the Akum gets a good deal, or at least he thinks he got a good deal from the Jews' transaction, then he's going to go ahead and pay homage and express his thanksgiving to the idol. Omer Shmuel, Ovi Kochav Maholich L'Tarfus. Oh, I'm kind of shocked here that the Gemara openly speaks about a Jew who worships idols. Again, if you learn Tanakh, you won't be shocked about this. But now the Gemara is going to make a distinction between a guy who's on his way to the temple and Nebuch, a Jew who's on his way to the temple. So if it's an Oved Kol Chav Alech L'Tarfus, it's a guy who's on his way to his temple, then Ba'alicha Asur. Okay, so now you want to enter into a business transaction with a guy who's on his way to the temple. And that's called Ba'alicha. He's on his way. Also, you're not allowed to enter into any business transactions lest he come to be so thrilled about the fact that he got this deal from the Jew that now he's going to thank his idol. The in other words, if you enter into a transaction with the guy on his way out after he exited from his temple, we're not afraid that he's going to now go back to the temple, retrace his steps in order to give homage and thank his idol. However, never if a Jew is worshipping an idol, Yisrael ha'olech l'tarfus, ba'alicha mutar, v'chazara os. Punkt verkehrt, we say in Yiddish. In the case of a guy who's on his way, don't enter into any transactions. It's awesome. He's going to pay homage to his idol. If he's on his way out, exit, we're not afraid he's going to go back. In the case of Yisrael, we have a much more complex perspective on what Israel is going to do or not going to do. The guy on his way to Avodah Zara is on his way to give homage to Avodah Zara. There's no question in our mind that if he's at point X on his way, he will reach point Y and arrive at his destination. But not so in the case of a Jew. Even though, again, Rabbi say, listen carefully, this Jew is on his way to worship an idol, we don't believe that he's going to go through with it and accomplish his goal of getting from place X to place Y, meaning to the temple. He's going to change his mind on the way. He's going to do tshuva. But now we flip it around the other way. And we're going to be more machmir in the case of a Jew than in the case of a guy. Case of a guy on his way back, he exited from the temple. We're not afraid he's going to go to pay homage because of a great transaction that he had with a Jew, and he's going to go all the way back to the temple. But in the case of a Jew, b'chazara also. Why? Kevon, top of page, Lamed Gimel. The avik ba, we'll see what that phrase means. Mi heder hader v'yazeh. This Jew went all the way, circled all the bases, came back to home plate, meaning he went into the temple and he never worshipped Avoda Zara. He is avik bey. Avik bey means like dvekus. Dvekus means he's totally clinging to the idol. And therefore, if he gets a good deal, even though he's already exited the temple, he's going to retrace his steps and go back to the temple. So the Gemara immediately asks, for Tanya, didn't we learn in a brayso that Yisrael haholich l'tarfus, bein b'halicha, bein b'chazar asur? If he is on his way to the temple, we believe that even though he's a Jew, he's going to get there. He's not going to change his mind and drop out. Rav Ashi, depends what kind of Jew you're dealing with. Ki Tanya ahi b'Yisrael mumar, divadai oz. Mumar means this guy has a track record, years and years over and over again, worshiping idols. Such a Jew, we can be assured, is on his way, he'll get there. And therefore, even b'derech halicha it's us. The chumrah, the Jew, in this case the mumar on the way out, is that he'll even go back. But if it's a regular Jew who's not a mumar, he doesn't have a track record, he hasn't proven himself to be avik bey, to be totally clinging and attached to the idolatry, then we believe he'll never make it there. He'll retrace his steps, and he'll retract, and he'll decide not to go. So this is where we're going to stop for today at Tanur Rabbanan, line 4. And if it's Hashem tomorrow, same time, same station. Thank you so much. Have a great day.